I'm going to be going ahead and breaking down my slideshow. Nothing crazy, but pretty much my slideshow is about the impact of the EGI on future prisoners. So the EGI, or the Equal Justice Initiative, is the organization that right here this dude Bryan Stevenson started, and it's pretty much just what you've already heard. It's pretty much just a program for people who have been falsely accused of their crimes, and it's made to really just bring their justice to the light and to pretty much just get them out of prison with any evidence they can, and to really just prove that whoever it is falsely put in prison so that they can be able to get out. But anyways, moving on to our main question: how did Bryan Stevenson's famous case with Johnny D, or Walter McMillian, impact the opportunities of retrials for future inmates who were falsely put in jail? So that was my main question. And for this slide, I pretty much recap Walter's case, but pretty much it's mostly the aftermath of what happened. So after he got released, in this point you can see that he was featured on 60 Minutes, and he went ahead and talked about his experiences on death row. And according to the EGI, more than 160 people who were on death row have been now proven innocent and released. Why? Because of the EGI, but also because of the impact of Walter McMillian's case. His case was truly, the movie was crazy, I'm not gonna lie. The movie was amazing, but the way that the movie portrayed the case was interesting to me because it was so real. Just the acting and like everything, it was just so raw. It was nice. But yeah, pretty much he was featured on 60 Minutes. And then my second bullet point: in 1998, Walter joined other survivors at a national conference on being wrongfully accused and the death penalty, and it was attended by more than 1,000 lawyers, law students, professors, and criminal justice reform advocates. So pretty much here you're just seeing that Walter actually went ahead and gave a speech. He went to a national conference, and again he talked about his experience, and the really good thing about the impact is that it's attended by more than 1,000 lawyers, right? And criminal justice reform advocates. So that's really gonna spread his message out there. And I think since his case was pretty much the first case that the EGI has ever done, and since it was such a powerful case, that's such a strong start. So I just feel like it was kind of a crazy case to start with. So any other prisoners that were really falsely accused, because of Walter's case, the impact of that would already be like, okay, we're dealing with the EGI here, like we can't really mess around. That's what the justice system might be thinking when they're going up against like Bryan Stevenson and his organization. But yeah, third point: on April 1st, 1993, McMillian spoke to the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee about the urgent need to end the death penalty, and he also quoted, "I am deeply troubled by the way the criminal system treated me and the difficulty I have in proving my innocence." He told the committee, "I'm also worried about others. I believe that there are other people under the sentence of death who are like me that are not guilty." So again, this is just crazy, like how deeply troubled he was, and obviously in the movie you saw the treatment. I'm not too sure. You've seen the scenes like the guards were hitting him and all that. I'm not too sure if that was real or fake, but I'm guessing it was real. So he was obviously not treated very well. And the good thing, again, U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee. So that's really gonna, really gonna make a big impact and really show that what they did was wrong, and they falsely accused him and put him in jail for a very long time. But yeah, overall the main take of this slide is just talking about his experience and pretty much setting you up for the base of what's going to happen and what he's already done for the impact of future prisoners. So now for this slide, this is a man called Anthony Ray Hinton. So he's actually, the cool thing is he's actually pretty famous now. He made a book. I think it's called, like, I couldn't put on the slide because it would just be too much, but it was called Where the Sun Doesn't Shine? Was it that? Hold on. No, it was called The Sun Does Shine, right? The Sun Does Shine. Yeah, it was The Sun Does Shine. So he created a book, which was kind of crazy. Is very inspirational. But yeah, he created a book. And this is one of his quotes. He said, "They took 30 years of my life," and this was after he got released, obviously, on the press conference. "They took 30 years of my life. As you said, what joy I have. I cannot afford to give that to them. Being angry," he said, "would be letting them win." So he doesn't want to really give them a reaction, because obviously then they're just going to win, because the people that incarcerated him had a racial bias against him, so that just kind of sucks. He said that, "I'm a person that loves to laugh. I love to see other people smile. And how can I smile when I'm full of hate? And so the 30 years that they got from me, I count today. I count every day as a joy." So that's, I don't know, that's just really inspiring. That's like really beautiful. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of cool to see how they've put a man on death row for 30 years, and he's just coming out and he's consciously deciding, he's saying, "Hey, listen, I can't be angry at you because that would just be letting you win." So he's truly suppressing himself, which is insane, because a lot of people in the same position would get super mad and show it, but it's pretty obvious that he has a lot of self-control, a lot of discipline, and he's overall a very kind, prosperous man. But yeah, so let me just explain this case real quick. I'm talking way too much. But pretty much what happened to Hinton was he was a man who worked in a warehouse, and what happened was that as you can see here, 3 fast food managers were shot, and they were also robbed in Birmingham, Alabama. And during the crime, Hinton was working at a warehouse, which was like 15 miles away from the crime scene, so kind of weird to suspect him. But one of the managers said that it was him from the photo lineup, and he accused him because he looked guilty and evil, I quote. And this manager had a history of racial bias, so he wasn't really winning that in the court, especially because everyone in the court, as you can see in the movie as well, in that time was racially biased. But the real point that got him in jail was that Hinton's mom owned a gun, so the prosecutor said that it was her gun that was linked to the crimes with the bullets, even though there was no concrete evidence. And afterwards he was sentenced to life in prison with the death penalty. I did not put this other piece of information on this slide because it's a little too much, but pretty much what happened was that Anthony was, I don't want to say he was broke, but he just didn't have enough money to hire like a real good lawyer. So the lawyer he hired had a visual disability, and he was set to examine the bullets off of the gun that were used in the crime. And because he was pretty much just incapable of understanding what he was seeing because he was visually impaired, it didn't really do him any justice, because he couldn't really prove that the bullets were used or not because he was visually impaired. He was also just some engineer out of nowhere, so that's the best Anthony could get at the time. So with that, he was just put to prison. No further examination, nothing, just fully put to prison, 30 years, set for life. Kind of crazy. But yeah, eventually, through years of the EGI, I believe in the article, if you look at my works cited, I believe it was this one, number 4, and number 3. No, number 4, number 2. It said that the EGI spent 15 years working on this case to prove his innocence. And they kept asking the court, like, "Hey, look at the case again. let's look at the bullets. And it took them 15 years, but they finally got Anthony out. But according to this, the state's evidence of a match was discredited by 3 highly qualified firearm examiners, including the former chief of the FBI's firearm and tool marks unit, who testified in 2002 that the bullets from all 3 crimes could not be matched to a single gun at all, much less to Miss Hinton's gun, and found that her gun could not have fired the bullets from the 3rd uncharged robbery. So, as I explained, his previous lawyer, which wasn't really even a lawyer, could not prove that the bullets were not actually used, but after much convincing, they went ahead and got the FBI to look at the gun, and finally they said, oh, well, okay, yeah, the bullets, they don't match, so you're innocent. But it took them like 15 years, which is insane. Like, that's crazy. And in that time frame, there was also a lot of racial bias. But especially in the movie, for example, you see the judge doesn't care, the court doesn't care. Do you guys remember that scene where they were about to get, let me show them, they were about to get Walter out of court, and everything was going smooth, everything was fine, and then out of nowhere, the judge was like, nah, you know what, nah, I'm not letting you go, you're still guilty. And everyone was like crashing out, everyone was mad, especially Walter's son, the actor. He was arrested just for yelling at the judge. I mean, not really even yelling. It was an appropriate response. He was like, "You're putting my dad in prison. He didn't do anything. You have no evidence. Why are you just keeping him sentenced to death?" And he got arrested by the officers, who obviously had racial bias against him. So, yeah, in that time, racial bias was a big thing, and it really did hinder real evidence because it would just be overpowered. As you saw, the judge, Brian Steven, not the judge, my bad. Him. I want to say Michael B. Jordan, but Brian Stevenson, he had all the evidence lined up, everything in that scene, everything was perfect, and then boom, nah, you know what? No. Only when the prosecutor, the witness, which I forgot his name, but you know who I'm talking about, the guy that said that Mr. McMillan did it, only when he went up to the stand and confessed, then he got justice. So pretty much, with all these slides, what I can say and what my takeaway from this whole story and these 2 stories is that the EGI really did do a good number on getting people out. If you go to their website, which I have all these links, if you go to their website, there's a ton of stories. I just chose this one. I chose Anthony's story because it stood out. But yeah, overall the impact was really, really good. And I guess if you think about it in a way, Walter's case was sort of breaking the ice, sort of breaking the barrier, and starting a new era of retrials and new justice, because it was never seen before. Like, back in the day, 19 whatever, when this case was going on, since there was so much racial bias and so much racism, having a judge advocate for a black man on court on death row was kind of wild, because everyone subconsciously knew, like, yeah, no matter how much evidence you give, they're still, Walter's still going to be dead, because they just don't care, as you saw in the movie. But yeah, those are my main takeaways. I think the EGI is very good. They served a lot of justice. Go check out their website. There's so many more testimonials and all that about people who have been falsely accused of crimes they did not commit. Innocent people with families, just like these 2. And they got out. Why? Because of Mr. Brian Stevenson, Mr. Michael B. Jordan, and his very good institution. But yeah, thank you so much for listening.